And honestly, when I look back on that, I think, you go, girl. How did you do that? I was grieving. My whole world was pulled out from under me. I had no idea about anything. And somehow, and this is a message for everybody, we underestimate what's in there. Somehow, there was guidance in me that moved me in that direction. And I'm so grateful to that little girl for doing that.
Have you ever looked back at a moment when you had every reason to stop and realized something in you kept moving anyway? Madelaine Weiss has built an entire body of work around that inner compass, the one most of us are too busy, too loud, or too scared to hear. This conversation is an invitation to quiet down and listen. This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Sagal. I am a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career, because I believe each of us is made on purpose for a purpose only we can fulfill. The longer we live out of alignment with who we are, what we do best, and why we are here, the more we miss out, and the more the world misses out on what only we can give. The Your Next Success podcast is where we explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life. We talk about self-discovery, smart job search strategies, professional growth, and you will hear stories from people who have navigated big career transitions themselves, so you can create a life-first career and become your own version of authentic success. Madelaine Claire Weiss is a Harvard-trained licensed psychotherapist, mindset expert, and board-certified executive, career, and life coach whose path from lab technician to therapist to author is in itself a masterclass in following your own signal. She is the author of Getting to Great, a 5-step strategy for work and life, co-author of the Handbook of Stressful Transitions Across the Lifespan, and has launched a personal development workbook for kids called What's Your Story? Her work centers on one belief, that a great life begins with a great fit between who you truly are and the world in which you truly live. Welcome to Next Success, Madelaine. I'm so thrilled to be talking with you today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to get to all of the wonderful things that you do. You're an author of multiple books, including this one, Getting to Great. We'll get to that. We'll get to the wonderful work that you do to help people through life or career transitions. And I'd love to start way back with your story. Can you help us understand, where were you born? What was life like for the very youngest Madelaine?
I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I stayed till I was around 21.
Okay.
I was born and raised there. I was a very feisty little girl, for better and for worse. In my book, I think I wrote about how my recollection, I spent most of my childhood grounded. And that's when I started writing to entertain myself. I would make these books out of construction paper and sew them up the middle with yarn and color the cover and all that kind of stuff.
So this desire to be an author and to have amazing books with awesome covers has been ingrained in you from a very early age. Now, I also spent quite a bit of time being grounded or restricted.
Thought I was the only one.
No, not the only one.
I wonder if it was, well, you're not of the same generation that I am, but I just wonder if back in the day, that kind of discipline, like there's this gentle parenting now. It wasn't as gentle. And I don't know what it was like for the other kids and their parents, although I spent a lot of time with my friends' parents. And they were always very warm and welcoming to me if and when I was ever allowed out. But there was this sense of importance, I think, in my father's mind about disciplining me well.
Mhm.
And in my later years now, when I think back on him, I think that he was keeping me safe. I
Mhm.
think that I was such a ball on fire that he was keeping me like like if I went out there, God knows what would happen. So
Yeah.
so
It was a
I've so I pivoted because I know you're interested in pivoting. I've pivoted over the years to this other point of view.
Now, what did he do for work?
So my father's intention was to go to law school, but the depression happened and his mother died early in her life of a heart attack. And the story goes that on her deathbed, he made a promise to her to take care of his father and the family business. And the family business was in the garment industry. So he used to take me sometimes to New York with him, and I'd be allowed to pick out stuff. I had a red patent leather wrap skirt once.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Very interesting. And did your mom work outside the home?
So my mother was the bookkeeper for my father's business. And
Gotcha.
she they didn't have calculators or computers or any of that then. So she didn't have an Excel spreadsheet. So she would sit there with her pen and go, ding. It's like
Yeah.
in her head.
Interesting.
Like
She didn't even have like the calculator ding ding with the
she,
like roll thing coming up.
I don't remember anything. I remember her
Wow.
going
The
down
pad.
the numbers.
Interesting. And so
Yeah.
now, if that's the family business for generations, and you remember her doing that, so it must have been a little bit hard for them to separate family life from work life. It just all was wrapped up.
Well, that's not all she did. She was the president of the local chapter of the City of Hope, which
Oh,
I
interesting.
think was leukemia, maybe, or
Interesting.
and our local temple, she was pretty active
So
that
she was
way.
giving back to the community, helping out with greater causes and helping your father's business and raising you. And I think you had a sibling as well.
I have an older brother. My mother was not very domesticated, so she did all those things more than I think she actually mothered. Kind of.
Aha.
And
Aha.
I think that I have vastly improved on her as a mother on purpose. And
Yeah.
I think my daughter has even taken it up a notch.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Wonderful mother. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I mean, we kinda want that, right? Because it's either gonna be, well, just gonna fall into the same old, or the heck if I'm gonna be like that, so I'm gonna try to do a 180 on
Right.
how all that went down. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've found nice balances in
Mhm.
the corrections and improvements over the generations. And I love seeing that because I'm all into growth and development anyway.
Yeah,
It's good
yeah.
to see it in my own family.
Now how about in school? Were there any particular, like, let's say, elementary, middle, high school, any particular subjects you enjoyed more than others? Were there activities outside of school you enjoyed more than others?
I enjoyed talking on the telephone to my friends because that's all I really had since I wasn't allowed out.
Yeah.
So that contact was really important to me. And I remember my mother saying, "You're much smarter than your brother, but you must never tell anyone I said that." So no one expected very much from me academically. And I didn't expect anything very much from myself academically. And so I have a lovely young granddaughter. Well, I have a few of them. And I'm very out there with them on how much I wished I had taken my studies more seriously, because now I can't get enough of history and philosophy and all that stuff. And when I say that to other adults, they say they weren't really teaching us that stuff anyway. So some of it they were. And
Yeah.
I just wish I had known then how much love for all of that lived inside of me that wasn't
Mm.
being addressed or acknowledged. But it is now.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Even in your book, I loved you have so many like references to other works and other things.
Thank you.
Amazing. I
Thank you.
appreciated that very. I come from a hard science background,
Right.
chemistry and polymers like rubber and plastic. So I was like, oh, yes, there's citations. I love it. It's not just random thoughts, it's random thoughts linking back to other people's studies. And
I
I
I
loved it all.
actually got in trouble for that when I was in business school.
Really?
The professor said he felt like he was being attacked with references. And he said, in the next paper you write, I just want to know what you think.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Because he felt like I was arming myself, like making my arguments bulletproof because this one said this and this one found that. And I had all these references. And he thought I was doing that to protect myself and my own thoughts and my own view of the world. And he said he wanted just that.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Right?
I can kind of see a part of that, like, okay, well, what you were, in my opinion, trying to present is the thoughts that you have are also well backed up by these things that these other people have found as well through a bunch of literature studies. So therefore, this is now you're adapting that information into your viewpoint. What's wrong with that? That's better than just a whim. Anyway.
While I was being raised, I think I was seen as an airhead. And this slew of references might be related to that.
To combat, to make sure everybody
Now that we're
knows.
chatting, I teach a decision making segment, and it's all science backed. Like everything I say, it's just like that book.
Yeah.
And so it's probably my armor, but I love reading it, you know?
Yeah.
And when I was studying Advaita Vedanta, that's that pre-Hindu tradition, which I studied for like 25 years. I used to, every time they would say something, the tutors, I would have a study and I'd bring it and they would say, well, I'm glad they're finally catching up with us. The science was so consistent with the ancient Eastern philosophy. And I was always wanting to say, yeah, I just read a study, blah, blah, blah. And, and they didn't appreciate it that much either. But I'm glad you do.
I do. I totally do. But okay, so let's dig into there's something happened in your teen years that very much influenced your perspective on the world and work and life. Can you help us understand what that experience was and how that?
Are you meaning my father died when I was 15, suddenly?
Yeah.
And nobody ever knew what to do with me. And they certainly didn't know what to do with me after that happened. So you can kind of imagine maybe that. And I don't know how I did this, but somehow I got myself into the University of Pennsylvania Graduate Hospital School of Technology, Medical Technology. And I honestly, when I look back on that, I think, you go, girl, you go. How did you do that? You know, I was grieving. My whole world was pulled out from under me. I had no idea, like, I had no idea about anything. And somehow, and this is a message for everybody, we underestimate what's in there. Somehow, there was guidance in me that moved me, or I used to move in that direction. And I'm like so grateful to that little girl for doing that.
Yeah. H- How did you decide that you wanted to go there?
I don't think anybody thought I was college material, which might explain why I kept getting this degree, that degree, that degree, that degree eventually. And I knew of other people, other kids who were going to these kinds of programs, but they weren't going to that one. And I don't know what it was because I remember that I was practically flunking physics and chemistry. And the teachers, we had moved to what you're not supposed to do when there's a death in the family. You're not supposed to pick the kids up and move, but we did to somewhere where it was a whole new school, a very different kind of school, and I didn't know anybody. But the teachers were so attentive and loving. They would meet with me separately to help me pass courses like physics and chemistry. Maybe it was their, I think they would call it scaffolding, the way these teachers held me that helped me to believe that I was fit for this school
Yeah.
of those schools. It's remarkable to me when I look back on it. I don't know how I did that, but I did it.
That's awesome also that those teachers, so you moved schools, brand new community, brand new everything, and these teachers wanted to take extra time and attention to try to support you however they could.
Right.
And likely meeting with you not just during class time, but inviting you
No,
to
it was
come
after.
and taking special. Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
actually think I was invited to dinner at their home.
Oh.
I think they
That,
really felt sorry for me.
well, but they also saw something in you, right? And so they have this fresh perspective and they're seeing this spunky, creative, articulate,
Well, we don't know if I
beautiful.
was articulate, but I
I
guess
let's say that you were. They're sitting. Why
there's
they didn't have
there's
to do that. They didn't have
a
to. They
picture of
wanted to.
me in the yearbook,
Yeah.
and it's like this. And the caption is Madelaine's eternal questions. So I
Oh,
must have been asking,
curious,
yeah,
inquisitive. Yeah, of wanting
I
to know
guess,
why, wanting to know how. That's awesome.
just being annoying. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say yeah, it's a both and world, right? Yeah, I asked a lot of questions as well, and my kids do too. And yes, maybe that doesn't allow other people to ask questions, but it sure as heck seemed like they weren't trying to ask anything. So,
Well, actually, the kids were very nice to me also. They nominated me right off the bat for Snow Queen. And I was first runner up because they had a lovely foreign exchange student, and she was the Snow Queen. But just
interesting.
the fact that they included me like that, it was
Yeah.
easy. So if, if anyone listening ever wonders what the value of a smile or just being present, like the gift of attention that we say, is the most beautiful and important gift there is. And
Yeah.
as I'm listening to myself tell this story today, that's when I'm seeing how one hand and another reaching out with a little bit of touch made such a difference. It like saved a life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And at any age, any stage, that welcoming acceptance, wanting to get to know somebody new, trying to do what you can to help their day be a little bit better. I think we can all be reminded of that in any circumstance, whether it's
Invite them to sit
school.
at your table at lunch. Or,
Yeah,
anyway,
because otherwise,
yeah.
where do you go? Okay, so you get into this school, and then did you go and like, I'm not sure how far that was from where you were living. Did you go live there, or was that a
No,
commuter school?
no.
Like,
I was living on the outskirts. Well, not even outskirts. I was not living in Center City, Philadelphia. The
yeah,
hospital and the school were in Center City, Philadelphia. I was a little further out. So there was a train across the street. from where
Okay.
we moved to. So I would take the train back and forth. And then I would do night call. I would never allow anyone I loved to do what I did. But back then, we weren't that mindful about safety or
Yeah.
now. So, yeah, I was back and forth at odd hours.
Interesting. And then what degree did you end up getting from that school?
I think it was a certification in laboratory technology.
And then what happened?
And then what? So I worked in that for a period of time in a number of different venues. So I worked in a hospital chem lab. I worked in group practice laboratories, and I worked for the USDA Biological Control Lab. So
Interesting.
I got to the point, here comes the pivot, where I realized I was spending my days with live bugs and other things I won't even mention. And I wanted to be with people,
Mm,
not bugs. So I went to social work school.
that's awesome.
No,
And how was
I
that?
no,
Yeah.
I skipped a whole school. I was I went to get a bachelor's. So I cried my way into school.
What does that mean? Tell me more.
Well, I applied. I was living in Massachusetts, and UMass was building a new school near where I lived. So their primary campus was in Amherst. And I wanted to go there because it would be inexpensive for me as a resident. And so I applied, and I was transferring students. I had lived for 3 years in Columbia, Missouri, and I was taking courses while I was raising my baby. So I was taking courses on the side, and I was trying to transfer them over, and they rejected me. And I remember my husband and I were going on a Windjammer cruise right after that happened. And I was kind of distraught. And I think I mentioned to people on the cruise that I had gotten rejected. And I said, well, you just go back there and you tell them, no, we can't. So I did. I wrote to the dean, and I have no idea what I said, but here I go again. I went to the dean. He actually agreed to meet with me. I walked in, I sat down, I started crying. And he said, okay, fine, fine, fine. And they accepted me. And then I told myself, I have to get a 4.0 here to prove that, to live up to the favor of letting me in after they
Oh,
rejected.
wow.
So I did.
And you also had a young kid at home and
Yes.
you're married as well. Were you also working at the same time?
No.
Okay, thank goodness.
But when I went to business school,
Yeah, let's catch up to that part. Yeah.
I was working for a group practice after social work school. I was working for a group practice, and the owners were using our office, among other offices, as their cash cow. And they overextended. So they had too many offices and not enough money because our office was making all the money and supporting everything else. So one day we show up to work and there's nothing in the office but a typewriter. Everything was cleared out. So I had my 7 sisters who were in the practice also, and we just got together and we said, okay, so we have a typewriter. Now we need an office manager and an accountant. And this goes back to my mother, the bookkeeper.
Yeah.
And they were dishing out who was going to do what. And I was pregnant with my son, like very pregnant, and also building a new house. So I had my feet up because, for the swelling and all of that. And I said, well, I don't know. My mother was a bookkeeper. They said, okay, great. You're treasurer. I said, okay, but what do I do? Because I don't know what to do. And
Yeah.
they said, get a brown bag, put all the money in the bag, and take it home and figure it out.
Interesting.
And so I did, which is another example. I have actually many examples in my life where you would never know what's inside of you as a human being until you need it.
Yeah.
I also, I don't know if I mentioned, I had flesh eating disease, like who gets that? And there are many examples from that experience as well, where what I had to endure and the decisions that I had to make, I would have never thought I was capable of. And yet, when you're called upon,
Yeah.
if you can get centered enough to hear what's inside and follow that, trust that, miracles.
It's, and in a world where there's so much competing for our attention, there's so much noise, how does one actually listen to that inner voice?
Okay, so not everybody's a big fan of meditation, but that's certainly one avenue. On my website, maybe you've seen there's a little tab that says Power Breathe or something like that.
Nice. Yeah.
And there's a one-page instructions for what I call a 30-second mindset reset. And I call it power breathing because I think it's so powerful. If you're not going to do like a full-blown meditation, and it's based on, maybe you've heard of polyvagal breathing,
Yeah.
where you fill the stomach instead of the lungs, and it
Yeah.
activates the polyvagal nerve, which sends a calming, focused kind of signal up to your brain. And so anybody can do that anywhere, anytime, for any reason. It's free to breathe. And that's another way when we're feeling a little frenetic to just
Center.
get centered. Just
Yeah.
get centered, because nobody should be making decisions from their chaos.
Imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Stay connected and explore what's possible at nextsuccesscareers.com and follow Next Success Method on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. How did you get interested in that? Like, because we've heard you have so many.
I know.
I think now some of the kids are saying it's multi-potentialite or it's a generalist or it's like whatever it is. You have had such a variety from like doing lab chemistry to being a treasurer to serving in a variety of, but
Crazy.
how did you get in? And then now, pre-Hindu philosophy, like,
Okay,
how
so
did you get
I
introduced to
had,
these things, Madelaine?
again, somebody reached out and touched me. I was going through a very hard time in my life, and there was this very kind elder gentleman who was part of this school of philosophy, he and his lovely wife. And he kept inviting me for lunch or coffee to make sure that I was okay, kind of like those teachers. And one day he said to me, Alice and I would really like this school. I said, I don't really think that's up my alley. I don't really think that's my thing. And he said, well, they have some very interesting courses and you will like this. one of them was science and reality. And I said, well, I have no idea what reality is at this point. That's clear. So what the heck? I'll try it. And, I went to them for the sort of intellectual stimulation. And I like to say they kind of healed my heart when I wasn't looking. They,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
like they got me in there, but then there was a lot of meditation tutorial, but even more interesting for me was learning about how the mind works and the tricks we play on ourselves and the hard times that we give ourselves, and learning how to stand outside of ourselves and watch the way the mind works. So at some point, I said, I think I was working at Harvard Medical School at that point in another capacity. But I thought, none of these people are going to that school. And this stuff is so simple. Everyone should know it, and they're not going to know it.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to bring it to them. So I went to learning and development at Harvard Medical School. I said, I have an idea for a 4-week course. Would you would you let me do it? And they did. And they even paid me, which was nice. And they said that the course was the only course they had ever run that grew over time. Usually there's attrition, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
people were banging down the door to get into this course because the concepts are things like we cannot be that which we observe, for then who is doing the observing? Stuff like that that helps us like not take ourselves quite as seriously as we
Yeah.
do and not believe the stories we tell ourselves are much more than stories.
Yeah.
So all that learning, people just loved it.
Oh, how long and did you keep teaching that course?
I
Or did it
did.
get past that?
I
So what
did.
was the title of that course?
I think at the time I was calling it managing your mind. I
Yeah.
think over the years I um, changed it to mastering because I thought, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Very
remember why I did.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, maybe so there's all this like kung fu master and martial arts master and maybe some of those kind of who
I
knows.
think I have a version of it on Udemy
Well,
where they
that's
have,
cool.
I do have a couple courses there, and that might be one of them.
Okay, so you learned something really intriguing, exciting that's helpful for you that you then want to go and make sure is available for others as well. The learning doesn't just stop. You don't just suck it up and take it in and enjoy your own life a little bit better. You also then have this great desire to let it go through you and impact many, many other lives as well. So,
So mahjong is a big thing right now across
yeah,
the country, and there's a game in my building,
yeah,
and I practice what I preach in my decision making materials,
yeah,
and so I win fair enough, and I tell everybody what I'm doing to practice
that's cool.
instead of keeping it my little secret. Oh, I have this special way that I do it that not a lot of people do it this way, but I think it's a really powerful way to do it. So I share it with everyone. So just to be nice and to be fair.
How many people actually do the practicing, right? So many people want to know the information, they want the shortcut, but they might not want to take the steps to
We'll see.
actually make improvements.
When they see me winning, they listen. I'm also, because of the decision making, so much faster than most people. Because
Interesting.
one of the things I teach about decision making is that when you're in your mind, and I see people at the table doing this, going back and forth, and churning and thinking, and thinking that the more you think about it, the better the decision will be. You're frying your brain.
Mm.
It's like draining energy, muddling
Yeah.
your brain's decision making clarity and ability. So I go fast, and they're all sitting there trying to make the best decision.
So you like to just take the leap and make a decision?
Well, it isn't like I don't think, but I'm a fan of not overthinking, and a lot of people overthink. And people overthink because they think when they're overthinking that they're actually doing something that's beneficial. And not
Interesting.
everyone knows that there's a sweet spot. There's a point beyond which you're just frying your brain.
You think it has anything to do with how you're wired or your natural ability or inductive or deductive reasoning, or it's something else?
Well, I think, and I imagine you agree that we all have habits of the brain, but
Yes,
we now know that we can change them. And
absolutely.
so I like to think of it as a garden, and we can plant this new garden
Yep,
and let the old one go to seed. Let it just
yep.
wither because you're not watering it. You know, that's that fable about the wolves
Yes, yes,
and the
yes.
young.
But go ahead and tell it for those that don't know.
Okay, so the young boy says to his grandfather, "If I botch this, please correct me." He says to his grandfather, "There are two wolves, and they're fighting, and I don't know which one's going to win." Am I right
It's
so
like
far?
there's something,
You
and I
tell.
think it could be wolves, it could be dragons. It's been told time and time and time again among generations and cultures, but it's the theory of there's some positive force and some negative force. And now, whether that's a dragon, whether that's a wolf, and they're constantly battling and who's going to win type of thing. And the reality is, the one that's going to win is the one that you feed.
Right, right.
So,
So
yeah,
in this course, kind of like a group that I'm facilitating, the one I
yeah,
mentioned to you that's called Calm in the Chaos, I talk to them about the marble and the groove. So, like the habits of the mind are like a groove.
yeah,
You know how your brain has groove? So,
yes,
it's like if you could picture, it's like a groove, and the marble has nowhere else to go except into the groove.
yeah,
So, this planting the new garden, building new neural connections is what it really is.
yeah,
But if you think of it as carving out a new groove, the marble can go there. And the more it goes there, the old one kind of smooths over and the
mhm,
marble. So you don't have to be, I don't think, and tell me whether if you don't agree, I don't think we have to be very aggressive about eradicating our bad habits. I think a better shot is to just build new ones and let those old ones do what they need to do, which is rest.
yes. And now the framework that I really loved that was the most profound of what I had found was this approach, positive intelligence by Shirzad Shamin is a Stanford professor. And the very front of this book says why only 20% of teams and individuals ever achieve their true potential and how you can achieve yours. And I was like, I mean, you had me at the cover, buddy, right? So
Yeah.
first, several years ago, I was thinking like, oh, that sounds so great. And then I realized there was a coaching program and I'm like, well, heck yeah, I want to get into that. And there was a coaching grant that they were offering at that time. And I'm like, well, absolutely. It'll be so great for my clients. And so this kind of broke down a lot of neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, all sorts of things that went into this approach. And it kind of was like in our minds, we have 10 negative and 5 positive kind of forces, whether it's in the positive or negative region of your brain. So, of the negative ones, it can be judge of circumstance, judge of self, judge of others. And there's also accomplice. They'll call those saboteurs. So, you got sage as positive, saboteurs as negative. And like, it could be high achieving, hyperachiever, hyper vigilant, victim, pleaser, avoider, etc. The positive ones are like innovation, creativity, all of those things. So, I liked this approach because first it was two assessments. One,
kind of roughly said in the past 24 to 48 hours, what percent of the time were you operating in positive versus negative regions of your brain? Like, oh, okay, cool. Second was, now of the favorite flavors that you could sabotage your thoughts, what ones were the most flavorful for you, type of deal. Of course, that's not the terms that he would say. However, so it was like, first I started with an assessment, then there was a 7-week program, little by little, introducing you over the weekend. Here's an hour-long module you're going to watch to kind of bring you. And then every day was like 15 minutes of practice to build up your, they say there's IQ, EQ. They now say PQ. PQ is positive intelligence quotient. And through those are going to be like guided meditations that are bringing somehow into it some of the five senses. So it could be
Mm.
breathe, pay attention to the feeling of the air entering your nose and out through your mouth. So, but kind of just guiding you over time to notice things you haven't noticed. Then from there, you're now observing, oh, there's my hyperachiever again. Oh, there's the victim. So it provided for me a clearer framework and something
Yeah.
to intentionally do and focus on that little by little, you don't even realize it. It's like compound interest with pennies. But then after that 7 or 8 weeks initial start, it's almost like you've downloaded a new mental operating system where you're starting to make new grooves and kind of observations. And then over time, because you've practiced and commanded your mind to focus in those things, regardless of all the things going on, then when you do hit a more challenging circumstance, has happened several times now since doing it. It's an amazing how my mind will just drop into those things that I intentionally practice. So instead of
Yes.
reacting, I can
Yeah.
respond.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that approach, but I hadn't had 20 years to research into it. And I'm sure his is based on so many other of the things that came before him. And they even had done fMRI studies on people's brains pre and post to see
Ah,
how it was.
well,
So it's like they
I love
had to get
that
all
part.
that. Yes, exactly. We both do.
I want to tell you, first of all, whatever works.
Yeah.
I don't think in positive and negative.
Okay.
I think more in evolutionary terms
Okay. What do you say?
that everything that's in there, it was pretty much in there for a reason. The first book that I read years ago on evolutionary psychiatry put all the major psychiatric syndromes into a framework of how they benefited us as a species. So
Interesting.
it's a feature run amok.
Interesting. Interesting.
So, like OCD, paying attention to detail, that's a pretty good thing if you're trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
And there's something called the negativity bias, where people are constantly looking for the negative. And some do that more than others, and some do that too much. And then you have a condition. But the fact that it's there at all was positive. It helped
Hmm.
us. It helped us to be able to survive, to be here, to even talk about it.
Yeah.
So I frame everything like that. So if people are judging or procrastinating or whatever they're doing that some people might say is negative, I want to know, how is that serving you? So Robert Wright wrote The Moral Animal, and that was one of the early books that I read on evolutionary psychology also. And he talks about knobs and tunings. And he says that we humans all have the same knobs, capacities for cooperation, competition, love, jealousy, whatever. We all
Yeah.
have the same features, the same knobs, but we have different tunings because we have higher developed brains
Yeah.
than the lizard. We can get our hands on those knobs and turn things up and down.
Yes.
So the knobs, to me, there's no positive or negative. There's just a more functional tuning. that will
Correct.
help create a happier, healthier, productive life. So, yeah.
I like that. Yeah, because that's like underneath each thing can be a good intention. And this kind of goes into that as well of like, how has this effect been on your performance, your relationships, and your well-being? And if you're good and it's good, then fine. But if it's if it's extra highly tuned and now that's causing you to
So,
have
so
yeah.
there's this wording that I've learned that I think does this. It's what would be even better. So you're not calling anything bad, but
Yeah.
what would be even better? Like,
Uh-huh.
how could you tweak something to make it even better? Because people are walking around feeling pretty bad about themselves already to some extent. So, like that story with the wolves or the dragon, we don't want to feed that. So, it's what could be even better.
That's kind of also what one of the lines in the book that you had written, and you've written several books, but let's talk about this one for a moment. Getting to Great. This was a framework that you had a 5-step strategy for work and life. And you said this book is about, is it possible to change the what is to what could become for each and every one of us? That's what this was about. So this is kind of your thing of like,
I
oh, well,
like
what
that.
could be next? Could have even been, right? You wrote it. And your 5-step strategy was with the acronym of GREAT, where G was grounding in the belief that a great life is possible through a great environmental fit. Please
I could,
do tell us what the acronym of GREAT
I'd be
means,
happy
Madelaine,
to.
starting from the beginning so I could delete that other way. All right, tell us what GREAT means.
Okay. You beautifully stated what the G is. But the first line of the book is a great life depends on a great fit between who we are and the environment in which we work and live. So R was for recognizing who you are, not who someone else said you should be, or not even necessarily who you always thought you should be.
Yeah.
So it's that deeper essence of you, which bubbles up when we give it space and room to do that by being a little quieter to be able to hear that. And then the E is once you have a sense of who we are, we can go exploring. And, there's a great big world out there. And I know how limited mine was growing up in terms of what I could or couldn't be. So getting beyond the idea of what somebody else thought you should do, or again, even what you might have thought you should be doing out there with your life, just to explore options that have maybe occurred to you before and you went, nah, I can't do that. Or maybe they never even occurred to you. But in any case, the exploration phase is sort of like dreaming of what else can be, what might be even better. But dreams don't make it happen without action. So William James said action doesn't guarantee happiness, but there's no happiness without it. So there has to be action. And then the T was for the normal, natural, inherent, predictable resistance to change when you think you're going to take action. There's a part of us that goes, where do you think you're going?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that idea?
Yeah.
What makes you think? I remember when I moved from Massachusetts to here, and I was leaving my job at Harvard Medical School, and I was going to set up a private practice here. I had a group of friends.
And where is here?
Oh, I'm in Washington, D.C.
Awesome. Okay.
So I had a group of colleague friends who were all social workers. And they lovingly said to me, what do you think you're doing? You think you're going to move to DC and just hang out a shingle? They said, do you have any idea how many of you there are there? And I said, yeah, well, I'm just going to try. And I did. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's getting past our ideas that kind of makes sense. I mean, They were right about everything they said,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be a reason not to try to see what's possible.
I love it. And if one can, treat it like an experiment
Yes.
and just see and explore and then just gather the data and then reiterate again and try another experiment and then gather the data and reiterate again and try another experiment. If we could remove this like judgment of it has to work right the first time within 30 seconds and just allow us to progress and keep becoming even more and more, that's what it's about, I think.
Yeah.
Now, I'm
Beautifully said.
curious.
Thank you.
Thank you. From your earliest days, did you have a vision or a version of what you thought it meant for someone to be successful?
No,
How about now? What do you say is authentic success for you?
that it is authentically me. I'm pretty steadfast in being me no matter what.
Yeah.
And somehow I find that I'm getting away with it better than I did when I was getting grounded for it all the time. So now that I think of it, I haven't really changed who I ever was. Like I'm still pretty feisty and I still counter a lot of common current day thinking
Mm.
because I see things differently often. I'm not getting grounded for it anymore. So that's changed.
Beautiful. How do people find you? How does one work with you these days?
On my website, everything is on my website at madelaneweiss.com. There's a button there near the top where people can sign up for a free strategy session. There's a blog tab, and there are hundreds now of blog entries on just everyday things that we all go through. I always kind of reflect on what people have been talking with me about. And then, as you can imagine, I go to the science and come up with some science for whatever the topic might be, like sleep or something like that. And there's that power breathing exercise people can download, and people can get it on mailing lists so they get the blog post. And I'm happy to hear from anyone.
Madelaine, thank you so much for helping us understand a little bit more of your story, some of the pivots that you've had, some of the great things that you're continuing to do and put out into the world and helping others. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sengel. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.